All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of deep history's greatest secrets, a whole world that just vanished beneath the ocean. We're talking about the lost continent of Sahul, and believe me, its story completely rewrites what we thought we knew about human migration.
Okay, so let's just start with a puzzle, one that stumped people for a long time. We all think of Australia as this huge island, right? But the first people arrived there way before anyone was making these epic ocean voyages. So how on earth did they do it?
And listen, just to wrap your head around that number, 65,000 years. We're talking about a time when Neanderthals were still around in Europe. That is a huge stretch of time, almost impossible to really imagine. And it makes that question, how did they get there, even more incredible, doesn't it?
Well, the answer, it turns out, isn't really about the kind of boats they had. It's about the world itself. Because the planet back then looked nothing like the maps we're used to seeing today. It was a totally different world.
Right, so this is the picture we all have in our heads. You've got Australia, New Guinea, Tasmania, all separate islands. There are huge stretches of ocean between them, like the Torres Strait. Trying to cross that today? That's a major trip. But, and this is the key, during the last ice age, a ton of the planet's water was frozen solid in these gigantic polar ice caps. Because of that, sea levels were way lower, like 120 meters lower. And all that exposed land created a huge single supercontinent. And that supercontinent had a name. It was called Sahul.
And this really just shows you everything, doesn't it? On one side, you've got our world of separate islands. On the other, you have the world these first people lived in. What are now huge sea barriers were once just dry land, massive plains, even rivers. This one change in geography, that's the key. That's what solves the whole mystery.
So, okay, with this totally new map of the world in our heads, we can finally start to understand one of the greatest stories of human exploration ever told, the story of how people first came to Sahul.
Now, even though it was one giant landmass, Sahul was still cut off from Asia by the ocean, so getting there still meant making a sea crossing, and probably one of the very first major sea voyages in all of human history. And you've got to realize, this wasn't some accident like people just drifting on a log. This was a planned, deliberate, incredibly brave journey. We're talking about skilled navigators, families maybe on bamboo rafts, heading out into the open ocean to find a world no one had ever laid eyes on before. Just imagine that. So, for thousands and thousands of years, people thrived on this continent. But, as we know, nothing lasts forever, and a huge, dramatic event, kind of like a slow-motion catastrophe, was about to happen. A change in the world's climate was literally going to wipe Sahul off the map.
So here's how it all went down. Around 20,000 years ago, the ice age starts to end, and the planet begins to warm up. All those massive ice sheets, they start to melt, and all that water has to go somewhere, into the oceans. Can you imagine? For generations, people would have just watched the ocean get closer and closer. At its worst, the sea might have been swallowing up more than a meter of land every single year. Eventually, all those low-lying plains that connected Australia and New Guinea were just gone, flooded, and they became islands, separated for good.
And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale of what was lost here, picture this. The amount of land that disappeared under the water was bigger than Greenland. And we're not just talking about empty desert either. This was land full of life. We're talking entire ecosystems, fertile coastlines, lakes, and of course, places where people lived. All of it slowly consumed by the sea.
So if this entire world is now at the bottom of the ocean, how do we even know about it, right? Well, the clues aren't just in geology. The story is kept alive through science. And what's truly incredible, it also lives on in human memory.
I mean, the evidence is pretty undeniable when you look at it. Archaeologists are literally finding ancient tools on the seafloor. Geneticists can see a clear, deep ancestral link between indigenous Australians and Papuans. But the most amazing piece of the puzzle, for me, comes from oral histories. Indigenous stories, passed down for thousands of years, some of the oldest stories in the world. They talk about this. They describe the coastlines changing and the sea rising to swallow the land. It's a memory preserved for millennia.
So here's the big takeaway. The story of Sahul, it isn't just a piece of Australian history. It's a fundamental chapter in the story of all of us. It shows how incredibly ingenious, brave, and adaptable our species can be when the world changes around them. It's truly a human story.
And that really brings us to the final question, the one that connects this all to today.
See, the story of Sahul isn't just some dusty old tale from the past. It is a real, powerful record of how people dealt with massive, catastrophic sea level rise. So as we look at our own changing coastlines today, you have to wonder, what can this lost world teach us about our own resilience, about adaptation, and about loss?